Paul, you ready?
Okay, and we got Mr. Sugar Ray Wheatley on the line. Thanks for coming on, Ray, this morning.
How are you, Paul?
I'm good, thanks, Ray.
Good on you, buddy.
We're on Radio 2BACR. We're special segment today to the great late Troy Waters, and I appreciate you coming on. We're going to talk about his career.
Oh, good as gold, Paul. Yeah, well, as we all know, mate, he had a great career as a professional, but he was also an outstanding amateur, mate. As a 16-year-old, in 1981, he competed in the World Championships in Santo Domingo. And Troy defeated the Finland representative in his first fight and lost a narrow decision to the representative from Canada by majority decision in his second fight. Now, when he made his professional debut in 1984, Troy stopped Johnny Piggott in 6 rounds, and he followed that with a 3-round stoppage of Sean Gray. Then he won 8-round decisions over Anthony Nadeau and Graham Looker before challenging Tony Campbell for the New South Wales title in 1985. Troy won that fight in 3 rounds, mate. In a massive assignment in 1986, Troy's very next fight, he was matched with against the future world champion, Inchul Beck, who at that time had a 35-1 record at 35 KOs. All his wins were by KO. Beck was pushed to the limit by Troy, and Troy told me only last year that Beck hurt him more than any of his other opponents, mate. He said he was sore for days afterwards. Beck was coming off a 9-round stoppage of the American Floyd Hodgson, who was a well-rated light middleweight. Now, in his very next fight in 1986, Troy defeated Paul Towell, at that time at a 22-2 record, for the Australian title, mate. Won that fight over 12 rounds and looked very impressive doing so. And in May of 1987, Troy, in front of 12,000 people, stopped Dwayne Lockman, the American Dwayne Lockman, in 7 rounds, who had a 9-1-1 record. Troy performed a boxing clinic at the City Entertainment Centre with referee Billy Miles working that fight on the Jeff Fennick Samat Pakaroon bill. Bill Morty had told Seth Waters that he brought Lockman out to defeat Troy. Bill was apparently upset that Seth Waters was continually asking for a world-class light middleweight for Troy. After that fight, Morty said, well, now I know that Troy's ready for the best light middleweights in the world. And in August of... Sorry, mate?
I was there at that Pakaroon fight.
Yeah, mate, he looked terrific, didn't he?
Yeah, I was just a young lad. I can vaguely remember.
Troy really stood out that night, Paul, I thought.
Yeah.
Mate, in August of 1987, Troy stopped Lloyd Hibbert in 4 rounds to win the Commonwealth title in Hobart, Tasmania. Troy had watched tapes of Hibbert and said he did not have the power to hold him off, and he was confident he could win that fight inside the distance, which he did. Hibbert had beaten the distance with Lloyd Huntington, so, Hibbert was a pretty tough customer. But this followed by back-to-back victories for Troy over the Americans Benito Fernandez in 10-round stoppage, Jack Callahan, a KO in 3 rounds, and then the African Gilbert Josamu was bombed out in 1 round. Ricky Stackhouse from America was outpointed over 10. The Englishman Michael Harris was stopped in 8 rounds. Then the African Judas Clotty went the 12-round distance. And that set up an IBF world title shot for Troy in 1989 against the champion Gianfranco Rossi in St. Vincent, Italy. Troy would have 1 week's training in London, training at the King's Cross Gym. I was there with Ian Batty, and we watched Troy's training. And he's sparring, he belted all the sparring partners up there, including Kirkland Lang. Kirkland Lang had a few years before had defeated the great Roberto Duran. And Kirkland Lang jumped in about 4 or 5 times with Troy, but each time it was Troy giving him a going over. Unfortunately, we went to Italy for 1 week before his fight, up there in St. Vincent, and Troy came down with a virus a few days before the fight, and that was in the European winter. It was very cold up there. Even on the day of the fight, when they took his blood pressure was very high. The doctor said that. And but during the fight, Troy was the aggressor in all the rounds, chased Rossi around the ring, but Rossi who ended up defending that IBF title successfully 12 times. He was a master tactician and can box very well on the back move and with a terrific work rate. And at the end of the 12 rounds, it was Rossi that got his hand raised. Now, back in Australia, Troy had victories over Aussie Ronald Dew, and they beat Annabelle Miranda of Colombia, then defeated other Aussies, Chris Singh, Craig Trotter, and an impressive victory over Floyd Williams of the USA, who came to Australia with a 19-2 record. Troy was at his best to stop Williams in 6 rounds. Troy then travelled to France in 1992 and stopped the Colombian, Donald Ortega Lara, in 2 rounds. And that was on the WBC Light Heavyweight Championship bill, featuring our champion, Jeff the Hitman Harding, who outpointed David Vedder. Troy had been working as a sparring partner with the Hitman, and Troy told me, he said, the Hitman got me in great shape and I got him in great shape, and we both won our fights. So, and the Hitman speaks very highly of Troy's sparring sessions with Troy. In June of 1993, Troy received a WBC light middleweight challenge against the pound-for-pound best Terry Norris in San Diego. Troy dropped Norris in round 2, which named the Ring Magazine Round of the Year. Referee Marty Denkin called the fight off at the end of round 3 due to severe cuts suffered by Troy. Points at that time were 27-27 on one scorecard. And you spoke to Norris about that fight, didn't you, Paul?
Yes, I did, mate. Well, when I met him at the WBC convention in Miami in 2016.
Yeah. Well, you've got to look at it. Previous to that fight in 1991, Norris had beaten the great Sugar Ray Leonard. So that was a marvellous effort by Troy. Troy said to me, he said he was confident he would have beaten Norris had the fight continued. But Troy would score one of his finest victories next up in 1993 with a 6-round stoppage of the Olympic gold medalist Robert Wangila, whose record was 21-3 at that time, at the Inglewood Forum in California to set up another WBC challenge. Charlie Gergen trained Troy for that fight and got him in fantastic shape. Now, in January 1994, Troy would have that other WBC light middleweight challenge in Las Vegas against the champion Simon Brown, whose record was 40-2. Brown had scored a 3-round knockout over Terry Norris to win the title. Troy pushed Brown to the wire, with one judge scoring at 114-114. But Brown retained the championship, with the other 2 judges voting in his favour. Troy said he thought the fight was close, but wasn't confident he would get the decision in the champion's backyard. He knew he had to win decisively to get that decision. Now, back in Australia in 1995, Troy was at his brilliant best, dominating the tough-as-nails Mexican and former WBC welterweight champ, Jorge Varga, over 10 rounds in Parramatta, scoring a shutout decision. Troy said Varga was a very tough guy, very tough Mexican, who absorbed everything. Troy had him down 3 times, hit him with everything bar the kitchen sink, but couldn't stop him. Troy then followed that with victories over the Canadian Ola Bonami by stoppage in 8 rounds. The American Kevin Pompey was stopped in 4 rounds. Another American, Lamarck Davis, was also stopped in 4. Then middleweight contender Lonnie Breasley, whose record was 27-3-2 of the USA. Now he was outpointed over 10. Then the Mexican Luis Vasquez was defeated. And that set up a WBC light middleweight elimination bout against the great Puerto Rican Felix Trinidad, whose record at that time was 31-0 with 28 KOs. That fight was held at Madison Square Garden. Troy went into that fight with with actually a broken rib, due to savage sparring sessions he had with Lonnie Bradley, which Troy's cornerman Johnny Herbert witnessed. And Trinidad was at his explosive best, winning inside the distance over Troy. Now, Troy would climb through the ropes for the final time on April the 5th, 1998, to stop the All-African champion Ambrose Milo, whose record was 17-5-1, and he stopped him in 7 rounds to bring down the curtain on a fabulous career. Troy's record at that time, his final record, 28 victories, 5 losses, and 20 KOs, so that was a great record. Now in 2009, Troy Waters was inducted into the Australian Boxing Hall of Fame. Troy was there with his wife Michelle. Famous fight broadcaster Colonel Bob Sheridan recalled Troy's memorable battle with Terry Norris to all in attendance, which was given a standing ovation. And it was very sad, mate, and the funeral was very sad, Paul. We had many old-time pugs there, mate, including yourself. It was good to see the WBC light heavyweight champ, Jeff the Hitman Harding, that told me about Troy was a fantastic sparring partner and a fantastic guy, and very sad, mate. Other fighters that were in there, mate, was Carly Meehan, the former world light heavyweight challenger, the former Commonwealth champ, Kenny Salisbury, also former champ, Bob Mirovic, and former rated national stars, Vito Gordioso, who used to be also was a long-time sparring partner of Jeff the Hitman Harding, Kevin Hogan, who, like yourself, Paul, had boxed Troy in the gym, sparring partner of Troy's. Roy Alexander, who was a two-time state champion and also boxed the very best. He trained with me for a little while. Troy Speeder was a very good light heavyweight. Dino Billinghurst, who was a classy welterweight and light middleweight and light heavyweight, actually. And he fought them all, Dino. And Dino's one of the outstanding trainers in Australia today. Matthew Reid, who was a personal, very close buddy of Troy. Troy told me he's a terrific bloke, Matthew Reid. It used to be also, like yourself, a long-time sparring partner of Troy's. The boxing officials that were there, mate, was New South Wales leading official David Granger. Also Ian Batty, who trained Troy was in his corner for 14 of his fights. Charlie Lucas was there, former world-class referee. Then former Redondo Beach, California, USA-based trainer, Charlie Gergen, who trained Troy for his fight with Robert Wangela. The pastor for the service was Steve Nee. Tributes were given by Dean, Guy and Tracy Waters, and letters from Troy's wife, Michelle, also Nate and Shantae, children Nate and Shantae, were read by Donna Nee. And tributes by Troy's close friends, Wal, Chop and Chookie, and Herbie. A tribute on Troy's career. I gave a tribute on Troy's career, and the 10 count was given by Dean. The pallbearers were Nate, son Nate, Troy's son, brothers Dean and Guy, and Chop. And,
how many people do you think was there?
I'd say over 1,000, Paul.
Yeah, I thought so. There was quite a few. I was, like everybody, I drove home from there, Ray, just in disbelief. This guy was dead at the age of 53. Drove back to Sydney. Ironically, Ray, my dad died of the same disease, acute leukemia, at the same age, and
yeah,
just my heart goes out to them children, mate.
Yeah, it's terrible, mate. You know, but Michelle's got the son Nate who's 17 and Shantae who's 14, but got a great support team there, mate. And Michelle comes from a great family. I knew I grew up with her father, Brucey Mills. Yeah. And
you know everybody, right?
Yeah, it was just he rang me in the late 90s. Troy rang me and he said, Ray, he said, I've met the girl I'm going to marry. And I said, who's this, mate? What's happened? He said, I've met the girl I'm going to marry. She works in an ice cream parlour and her name's Michelle. And he said, you wouldn't believe it, you know her father. And he told me, he said, you grew up with her father, Brucey Mills. Now, Troy was just fantastic. If you really got to know Troy, and I used to spend day in and day out with him and seeing him under pressure and the rest of it, and he never changed, mate. He was always fun-loving guy, mate. My last conversation with him was on May the 11th, mate, you know, and he was in hospital and he was getting ready to have an operation on his heart, mate. They didn't realise until afterwards that his heart was in worse shape than they thought, mate, and that's what ultimately caused his death. But Troy, even in that sad time, mate, was cracking jokes right at the end, mate, and that's the last thing I remember Troy laughing, you know, so.
Well, Dean had the whole place laughing with his speech he gave. It was, you know, you just got to know Troy a bit better at that funeral, listen to his big bro speech.
Yeah, oh mate, we'll say that.